What's going on, guys? It's Bear here with the Scryguystv, and today we're going to be doing a top 5 graveyard commanders. Well, at least my top 5.
In other news,
and we have 2 honorable mentions on there as well, because I feel it would be wrong for me not to mention these guys. But the first thing I gotta do is, I feel like these cards need to be banned. I'm just kidding, they don't need to be banned. But it is super detrimental when they hit the battlefield, because you know they're going to be either targeting you or it's just going to suck. And that's going to be Bojuka Bog and Rest in Peace. These cards suck for graveyard decks, but I understand. So let's first get to our one out of the 2 honorable mentions that we have is Muldrotha and Kunoros. I feel like I'm not saying Kunoros right, but 3 in Mardu, legendary creature, elder, giant dog, vigilance, menace, and lifelink. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may exile 5 cards from your graveyard. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it is also a 6/6. That's a big boy with a lot of keywords. The only reason why it's in the honorable mentions is that you need a lot of setup to really get the max value out of Muldrotha. So you're gonna have to set up like mesmeric orbs or just other ways for you to be able to fill up your graveyard as much as possible, because obviously you're gonna want to drop a ton of bombs into your deck, but you're also gonna have to escape for 5, which is an archetype that came out during Theros Beyond. I believe that's what the set is called. And so as fast as you can get Crux out, it's not going to matter if you have nothing to escape out of the graveyard. And then obviously plus you know, if I could have Quest pull up his deck list or make a video out of his deck list, you guys can see. I think he built it a little bit stacksy to be able to slow us down just enough so he can set up for this monstrosity to come out and bring out things like Razakath, some Eldrazi's, Avacyn to make everything indestructible. Just all things that don't make the game fun for me. But what's it called? If we're able to, you know, and sometimes we didn't have answers for any of this, and so he would kind of run away with the game pretty quickly. But again, the only reason it's an honorable mention is that it does require a lot, or not even a lot, but a ton of setup to be able to go ahead and fill up your graveyard as much as possible before someone could possibly Bojuka Bog you or Rest in Peace you and all that stuff. And if he doesn't stick around, or if any of the creatures don't stick around, and then he kind of just sat there, which is true for a lot of things, especially Quest, because he likes to go 0 to 100 for his decks. It's all or nothing. He's terrifying to play against sometimes, just because of how just out the gate, you know, just smashing faces as quickly as possible. But I think the reason why I do have it as honorable mention, like I said, is just it does require a ton of setup. And then for our second honorable mention, and I know some of you might think it's controversial and then she's like original graveyard mommy, but Meren of Clan Toth, 2 and Golgar, legendary creature, human shaman. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, you may choose a creature card in your graveyard. If the card's mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience, you could return to the battlefield. Otherwise, you put into your hand. I would have to say that I feel like this was much more terrifying during the battle cruiser era of Magic, when everybody was attacking a lot more. CEDH, I believe, was still in its infancy stages. You know, I think everyone was doing like Helm of Obedience combos, and I just feel like, yeah, this with Spore Frog was a terror, just because you knew you were in for a long game trying to kill the Meren as fast as possible. But if you kind of got Meren killed enough, or enough times where it was costing 10, 12, 14 mana, that player kind of just seemed to be sitting there a lot. And I believe that would be more so the case today than it was back in the day. Just we have just so much more spot. A lot of people are playing more spot removal versus board wipes. The game is just it's a little bit, it's faster, so I feel like the power creep has gone to this card. Also, like, the effect doesn't trigger until the end step, so if someone just gets rid of her during main phase 2, she kind of didn't recur anything for you. I mean, Golgari is really good at recurring things from the graveyard nonetheless, but Meren was like the main game plan back in the day, so I think I had to put her here just because for the fact that ton of more spot removal nowadays, so Meren isn't going to be sticking around that much, like as long as she did back in the day. And into, like, you know, the trigger doesn't happen until the end step, so yeah, again, if it gets removed by then it doesn't matter. So yeah, I know some of you might be like, well, you haven't seen my Meren deck. Well, yeah, I haven't, but honestly, I haven't seen a Meren deck in a very long time. I believe she's really great now as a part of the 99 rather than the head of the commander deck, because of the rest of this list. I feel like those are a lot better, and she just serves better as like a lieutenant, less than a commander. So tell me in the comments I'm wrong, though, you know. But for our number 5, we have Chainer Nightmare Adept. Now, I know there is a mono black Chainer that has a reduction on getting these creatures from the graveyard with 3 black and 3 life. The one thing I don't like about that is you could possibly you could just spend all your mana on one turn to possibly reanimate 2 to 3 creatures, spending 9 mana, 6 to 9 mana doing that. The one issue that I always did have with it is that if you got rid of Chainer as soon as those abilities resolved, all those creatures that you just spent your turn recurring from the graveyard are now exiled, because if Chainer leaves the battlefield, it exiles all nightmares, which your creatures are nightmares if you choose to recur them that way. And that kind of sucks. So that's why I like this Chainer just a little bit more. And you also get access to red, which obviously, you know, Dockside, Jessica's Will, you know, deflecting SWAT and all that stuff. But Chainer Nightmare Adept, 2 in Rakdos, legendary creature, human minion. Discard a card. You may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. Activate only once each turn. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if you didn't cast it from your hand, it gains haste. It is also a 3/2. So it itself will gain haste when you cast it from the command zone because it is not in your hand. But being able to go ahead and go into, you know, being able to feed your graveyard while recurring something else was really great. The access to red gives you access to a lot of card draw that requires you to discard a card, so you can go ahead and discard bombs or whatever, or like maybe a little, you know, combo piece or something into the graveyard, so you have access to it. Maybe you wanted to give it haste, so you go ahead and discard it and then recur it and then do all that stuff. But yeah, I believe just because the effect is so immediate on the discard to be able to cast it and then also gain haste, I think that's what made it. I think that's what beat it out on Meren just a little bit. I mean, I know with Meren you get free spells possibly, but with this you are at least going to, you know, when you go ahead and trigger, it's on the stack, you can go ahead and cast something before it gets removed. It won't have haste though, but you're in Rakdos. You'll be able to pitch it to the graveyard and possibly Dance of the Dead, Necromancy it back into the field, or, you know, Cabal coffers it out. But that's why I have it at number 5. I mean, it is, if it wasn't limited, it had to be limited to once per turn, just because people are gonna go ahead and get into a Dockside loop. But but you know, if it didn't have that, it'd probably be a lot higher, and you would probably see Chainer have a lot more play. What do we have for number 4? We have Slimefoot and Squee in Jund, legendary creature, fungus goblin. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token, and then you could pay 1 in Jund, sacrifice a sapperling, return Slimefoot and Squee and up to 1 other creature card from your graveyard into the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is really cool because it's very reminiscent of the Derevi stacks, where Derevi, the bird commander that has a command tax evasion on it, and this kind of has also the same type of ability. But the one thing I will say though is make sure to have a decent amount of cards that can produce you other sapperlings, just because this only activates as a sorcery. So if before it gets back to your turn, maybe you've sacked him to an Astronaut's Altar, Phyrexian Altar, or Vizier Seer at your end step, and then someone go ahead and, like, I don't know, bolts your one and only sapperling. Now it's in the graveyard. Now you have no way to recur it. It's gonna suck. It's gonna suck that your commander is going to be stuck into the graveyard, and then all you could do is hopefully you go into a tutor that'll get you a reanimate, and then someone go ahead and just counterspells it, which really sucks. So please make sure to put enough sapperling production into your deck besides Slimefoot and Squee. One other thing I'll say is that this can definitely get into a dockside loop with itself, because when it enters the battlefield, it makes its own sapperling. So you can go ahead, Ashnod's or Phyrexian or whatever, sacrifice both of them, and then just make a bunch of freaking treasures, which is not fun. I've seen it a lot on MTGO, and you're just like, well, I guess I just concede now. Especially if you pair that dockside up with, I don't know, like a Corvold. So now you're just drawing in your entire deck, which would be not fun for anybody. But yeah, like again, the thing about this with Crux, like very same thing with Cruxa, a little bit less intensive than Cruxa, is that you do have to go ahead and fill up your graveyard, which, I mean, all of these decks are gonna have that requirement, but this one is just a lot easier, and a lot easier with the green too, just because there's a bunch of other green cards that pitch things to the graveyard, like Mulch. I believe Gerard's Orders does that. You have access to, I believe, that 4 mana Buried Alive, the 2 and Golgari. I'm just like slipping my mind right now. And so, you know, and then plus you get the ramp. And you also get access to other more, you know, to some other fun commanders that will help you fill up the graveyard too, like, you know, Corvold, like, you know, perhaps Corvold. You also get access to that dragon from New Capenna, where you can go and sacrifice creatures to throw damage and then make 3 treasures. I mean, there's just a ton of fun cards in Jund. You know, Jund always gets a new toy. I believe that's Dredge gets a new toy. But yeah, definitely a super fun commander, and it is, you know, like Fungus, you know, Last of Us. That's why it was such an issue, man. Fungus is dangerous. And it's super cute. It's like, I think probably two of my favorite like characters in Magic the Gathering. It's just these 2 guys together. It's like the junior varsity squad like joined up and just took on the rest of the world and really took all the way to the state championship. I don't know. All right. Let's get down to our number 3 graveyard commander, which is Karador, Ghost Chieftain, 5 and Abzan. Legendary creature, Centaur Spirit. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a creature spell from your graveyard. It is also a 3/4. Now, the reason why this is so high on this list, I mean, it's at this point an old school commander. I believe it was in the first Commander products. Yeah, 2011. It was this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's this. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But for the good chunk of this will always cost 3 mana, especially as the game drags out. This will continue being 3 mana, but I believe because of the access to white that you have so many combo lines that are going to be open to you. The only ones I can think about right now are the old school ones like Boomweaver Giant combo, but you also have Karmic God and Revelar combo lines. You have if you want to have fun, you could have Lifeline in this deck as well. And Safi, Eric's daughter, in there for that combo line. Or I don't know if it's a combo line. It's not a combo line, I believe. I believe I just tried. I think I tried making that deck and it didn't work out as well as I thought it would. But yeah, no. The reason why it's so high on this list is just it's almost kind of being able to evade commander attacks, because you're usually building this deck with 35 to 40 creatures, and so that 5 is almost negligible, especially the longer the game goes on. Then maybe it costs, I don't know, 10, 12, but it's like, even then you know, the first time you cast it, you're hopefully casting it for 3 mana, and then maybe at that point, maybe you're casting it for 4 or 5, 6, 7, or the game goes longer and it stays around 5 mana. And also because you can choose when to cast these creatures. It's once during each of your turns, but sometimes that once is enough. And I had to put it up fairly high just because I feel like it's such an OG commander at this point. So yeah, still a really fun one. I haven't revisited it in a while, and I always think about it. It's like the first love, you know what I mean? Next we have on our number 2 slot, we have Nethroi, Apex of Death, which is going to be 2 and Abzan. It is a legendary creature, Cat Nightmare Beast, but it has mutate for 4 hybrid Celestia and 2 black Death Touch lifelink. Whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with a total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it is also a 5/5. So you do have a lot of the same lines that you would have with Karador, but this is gonna, especially if you like, the thing about it is that if you have Scourge of the Skyclaves in your graveyard, that's already like minus 20, I believe. So that adds, so like then you're getting power 30 or less. You're pretty much going to go ahead and recur your entire graveyard at that point. One thing I used to love to do with this guy is have Avenger of Zendikar and Creator of Behemoth in my graveyard, so it's probably an instant board, first of all, it's instant presence with Avenger of Zendikar alone, but you're probably going to win that turn. There's a fair amount of creatures in these colors that you could also go ahead and put in there that have the mutate ability, so maybe maybe it's already died once and casting it for 9 mana is too much, but you can cast it for 7 again and then mutate onto it, so you get double the triggers from both mutates. Also, just a lot of the same combo lines that you have for Karador. So I just put it a little bit higher on this list just because of its ability to explode when it mutates onto a creature. Again, one of the things that does suck, and one of the reasons why I would put other mutate cards into this deck, is because if the creature that you're mutating on is gone, it just comes down as a 5/5 for 7 mana, which isn't great stats, and you totally miss out on the trigger. So if you have some of the other creatures, the smaller ones that can go ahead and mutate onto him, put it underneath it, then you're going to be able to go ahead and at least still get that trigger. So yeah, I had to put a little bit higher just because of its ability to have this explosive turn, possibly game-ending turn, especially if you pair it up with the Hermit Druid. I was gonna say Human Druid, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. But Hermit Druid, you could possibly have, by the time you cast it, possibly have the win for the game. And then for our number 1 graveyard commander, I don't think this comes as to surprise to any of you, because you're like, well, if it wasn't on the early list, it has to be number one, or if it's not on this list, then this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I had to put Muldrotha the Gravetide 3 and Soultide, legendary creature, elemental avatar. During each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. It is a 6/6, and I like the flavor text. Yargle hadn't bargained on her showing up. Means mommy was home, Yargle. But this is sort of like a super version of the first two, right? Or at least a Karador. But being able to go ahead, go into your graveyard, and then cast and play in the land, casting a creature, casting a planeswalker, an artifact, an enchantment, a battle. I don't know what else is gonna come out during the rest of this year, but you're possibly gonna have more access to more different type of permanents. Who knows? But having access to all that during each of your turns, I just know, like, I know not just me, but you guys watching this at home have been stuck at a table, someone playing Muldrotha, it's stuck around for the turn, and it is just playing everything and anything that it can from the graveyard. Especially because there's creatures out there that brings like instants and sorceries back to your hand, so you're possibly getting into a time warp loop where someone's just taking infinite turns because they're sacrificing their archaeologist and they're recasting it, they're getting back time warp, or temporal, oh gosh, I forgot what the card is called now. I play the card, jeez. Or capture a Jing Zhao now that it got a reprint in Commander Masters. It's so versatile. Like, obviously when this hits the board, you want to kill it immediately because someone just spent possibly their whole turn casting this commander, and now, like, if you can kill it before it gets back to their turn, before they can accrue the value from it, you're gonna want to do that. But sometimes you don't have the path in hand, and you're just like, oh no. But also they have a lot of access to those 0-drop artifacts that either draw you a card when you sacrifice them, and or sacrifice them to add mana that can play it again. There's Pernicious Deeds that they can keep recurring board wipes, do that again. There's just so many lines that Muldrotha players can go, that, every time you go into a table and someone's playing this and they're like, hey man, don't worry, it's chill, it's not gonna be chill. I know that. It doesn't matter what level Muldrotha, like, this table is at, Muldrotha is just that good of a commander to take any deck and then boost it up a couple points in power level. Like, say, like, your play group is used to playing at 5, and the guy who built this has level 5 type of cards, and I don't know how you would distinct what a level is, but that deck is now at least like a 6 or a 7 possibly, depending. Who knows? There's a lot of cheap cards or a lot of budget cards that you can put on Muldrotha deck that now they used to look like Pee-wee football. Now they're looking at like at least junior varsity. So this is just a rat. But yeah, this is going to be my top 5 graveyard commanders. Tell me what your top 5 graveyard commanders are. Let me know about your experience playing against or playing graveyard commanders. And yeah, hope you guys have a fun time. Hopefully this video has been informative. And yeah, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We obviously enjoy making these videos for you guys. And hopefully stay tuned for the channel. Hopefully soon we're going to be able to give you guys gameplay video and all that stuff. So have a good one, guys.